I had to move out of my house a few months ago for work reasons, even though I had to wait a few months before I could move again. I chose to stay at my close friend Amy's holiday family house because I can work from anywhere. Plus, it's in the town where I grew up, so it's pretty much always empty. I remember this family and their house well from when I was a little kid. The house is pretty big, with 5 bedrooms spread out over 2 floors. It's in a quiet, even remote part of the town, surrounded by trees and other empty vacation homes. But I don't want to let fear stop me. I'm a 27-year-old woman living alone, so I knew this might feel scary. To feel safer, I took a few steps. I was going to carefully check all the doors and windows before I moved in. After that, I would check every room, under every bed, and in every closet. I could be sure that the house was empty this way, and I would keep it that way by carefully locking all the doors. I also knew there were no extra keys. That way, if I felt scared at night, I could tell myself it was all in my head. Since she lives close, my mom came with me to help check everything. When we first checked the doors and windows, we ran into a problem. It was easy for anyone to slide open 2 glass doors from the porch that weren't working right. This is how those doors were set up. 2 doors led from the patio to the rest of the house. 1 led to the yard. This meant that someone could come in from the porch and go inside. What word do you think of now? It could be porch, which means a room with big windows or wide glass sliding doors instead of walls. Once I knew what was wrong, I called my friend Amy, and we both agreed that I should call a locksmith. Amy's family is having a hard time with money right now, so we might fix just the garden door or both of them, based on how much it costs. Luckily, the price wasn't too high. The woman locksmith was able to change both locks. The backyard was now completely safe. The locksmith, on the other hand, said that the glass door to the yard was weak, and anyone could easily break through it. But I didn't worry about that because the glass door between the patio and the house was safe. As long as I felt safe in my own home, people could have fun on the porch. I was careful with the doors the first few days, and the area around the house was so nice and quiet that I quickly fell in love with living there. I liked getting cozy by the campfire, eating tasty food, and taking in the fresh air. I was happy and free. In the beginning, I did notice one small but strange thing. There was no longer a lock on a 3rd glass door. Even though I had carefully checked every door during my inspection, I was still shocked. That 2nd door was right next to the one I fixed inside the house and next to the patio. The patio wasn't totally safe anymore, but I thought it was fine because all the doors that led outside were still locked. It was something I didn't want to think about or worry about. I didn't want false fears to bother me. That's when I realized I must have missed it. It made me feel a little bad that I made Amy's family buy 2 locks when they should have bought 3. My childhood friends had all moved away from the village, so I spent 2 wonderful months living my dream mostly by myself. Then a friend came to visit me. We went outside for a while and drank some beer with me before I drove him the hour-long distance back to his town. He even told me I was being careful to close all the doors behind us as we left my house. I told him that I needed to feel safe there. When I got home around 10 p.m., I locked the door behind me and went inside. As I turned the key, I got serious goosebumps all over my head. It was the strangest feeling I'd ever had, and I had no idea that people could get goosebumps on their head. Besides that, I had a strong feeling that something was wrong, and I should be careful. All of this was so strong that I couldn't ignore it, but I knew my house was locked tight. I kept my eyes open as I walked through the door and into the kitchen. It was orange, and I saw a small blue plastic bag lying on the ground. I was shocked because I knew it was a bag that you put water in to make ice cubes. It wasn't supposed to be there. If you need freezer bags to store your food, I've seen these bags before. Even worse, I thought they were freezer bags. I knew they were in a drawer on the other side of the kitchen. I was sure that neither my friend nor I had used them before. Finding the bag made me feel even more uncomfortable. I asked my friend if he had used a picture I sent him. He said he had never been to the kitchen. I went into the living room with a baseball bat in my hand. When I was scared in the house, I would go through each room quickly to calm down. That's what I wanted to do at that time, but something in my gut told me not to. It made me want to leave the house instead. I went to my mom's house and slept there. Then on a sunny afternoon a few days later, my mom and I went back and did a full check. Everything was there, but nobody was there. Everything was just the way I left it. Based on that information, I came to the conclusion that my friend must have taken the bags by accident, lost track of them. They must have dropped to the floor when I opened the door or something. It was still nice to live in this beautiful place for another month after I went back inside. Then something else took place. There were some strange sounds going on for a few days that scared me, so I decided to check everything again. It was almost 9 o'clock when I went into every room and looked under every bed. Everything was clear downstairs. When I went upstairs and opened the door to the first bedroom, I was shocked to see that the light was on. It made me jump a bit. The doors to these rooms upstairs are always locked, so I never go in them. But before I could open the closet, I felt a chill go down my spine when I saw something strange lying on top of the furniture. The closet door was open, but no one was inside, so I shut it and looked at the thing inside. It was a long, black sheath that was pretty big and had a hook on the back to hang it on a belt. I thought of a scary thought. It could be a knife sheath. I pushed that thought away because I did not want my mind to wander during that time. After I was done with my checkup, I felt strange about the sheath and the light, even though I hadn't found anyone. I slept at my mom's house again that night. I called my friend Amy the next day. They didn't know which family member had been in the house while I was gone because no one had come in and looked at the object. After that, I thought about the patio's third door again. I had been putting off this thought for a few weeks because I didn't want to be too scared. Now that I think about how carefully I checked the entrance, it doesn't seem likely that I missed a door. As well, the locksmith had changed the lock on the door next to it and looked at it to see how a good lock should work. An old Airbnb guest might have made a copy of the keys, Amy and I thought at first. When the third door's locksmith came to check the lock, she found that the part of the lock that screws into the door frame and holds the key had been unscrewed. She also looked at the yard door that her coworker had said was simple to open. She said, "This lock turns." There was no chance in any of this. Someone did it on purpose. I made up my mind to leave the house for good. Someone knew how to get into this house because of how I locked it when I got there, and they made sure they could still get in even after I changed the locks. I worked for the U.S. Air Force at Aviano Air Base in northern Italy from 2019 to 2021. That's when I moved in with a close friend from tech school and his wife. Living with them changed how I felt about ghosts. I used to not believe in them at all, but now I'm pretty sure they're real. Some weird things happened, and I still don't fully believe because I don't think anyone really knows why. I also can't say for sure what was going on in that house. Things didn't seem out of the ordinary during the first week in the house. I had very bad dreams every night after that week, though. I don't remember what these dreams were about, which could be a good thing. I do remember that they made me feel scared and uneasy. I had sleep paralysis almost every time I woke up from one of these dreams. I remember lying there stuck and scared because I couldn't move. I started to hear a buzzing sound in my ears. It kept getting louder until it was almost too much to handle. I remember being awake in a cold sweat one time. I felt scared and confused as I looked around the room. I saw a dark figure get up from the foot of my bed. It was hard to make out, but it looked like it was reaching out to grab me. All of a sudden, it began to lift my legs off the bed and fear swept over me. I probably woke up because of the rush of energy going through my body at that very moment. I saw that the person who was lifting my feet wasn't really there. It was like I was dreaming or half asleep, but I was really scared because the experience was so real and detailed. My friends also said they had bad dreams, but they weren't as bad or happened as often as mine. When I woke up at night from these dreams, I would sometimes hear noises coming from downstairs. The people who slept above me could also hear them. The sounds were like pots, pans, and silverware being moved around, as well as doors opening and closing. Even so, I wasn't sure because I didn't dare leave my room to find out, since the dreams were already making me scared. My friends now knew more about ghosts and how to handle them because they had seen them happen before. They said it would protect me, so they went to the store and bought some dried sage and a necklace with beads. I didn't trust it, but I never took that chain off when I was inside. That being said, the dried sage we tried to burn in the house wouldn't light at all. We held the fire to it for a long time, but it wouldn't even start to burn. What was weird was that the sage caught fire as soon as we took it outside. We tried to light it again when we got it back inside, but it wouldn't work no matter how hard we tried. This might have been because the house was damp or something else, but it scared us a bit. We tried to burn the sage that same night. My friend and I both woke up at the same time. We got out of our rooms and met in the hall. We were both hungry at midnight and the house was empty. But as soon as we got close and greeted each other, the sounds I had already mentioned began. There was silence in the hallway near the stairs for a minute while we both tried to figure out what we were hearing. The necklace my friends had bought me then exploded out of the blue, and I mean out of the blue. We were standing still and just listening. The beads were all over the floor when it broke without being touched. When my friends said they saw the thing, that was the last straw. This is what they said they saw, but I'm not sure if I fully believe them. They were eating in our kitchen one day and sitting at the table facing the back door. Behind the table where they were sitting, they could see into the hall through the door's mirror. Both of them said they saw an old woman walk by that opening. They told me that they didn't talk to each other at all. They looked at each other, then quickly went to their rooms upstairs. That meeting was the last straw for them, because after that, they called someone. A curandero or something like that. It might have been a Mexican priest or witch doctor, but I'm not sure. He told them we were in danger, and that he was going to do a ceremony to get rid of whatever was in our house. He did something, but it worked, and I was just glad to get a good night's sleep. When he was done, nothing strange happened in the house again. This was the only ghostly thing I've ever seen or heard, and I'm still not sure what it all means. My daughter and I just got back from a trip to Virginia. We had planned to stay at an Airbnb for 6 nights, but we only stayed for 3. The host was nice and had that warm southern welcome. But from the first night on, something didn't feel right. It was really hard for me to remember the door code, which was a long string of 7 numbers that she had learned by heart. So I locked us out as soon as we got there and started unloading our bags. I was so mad that I had to walk over to the host's house and ask for the code again. The host made us feel welcome in her home, but quickly things turned strange. She seemed nice when she asked if we wanted something to drink. Then she started asking my daughter a lot of strange questions. She even told me not to speak because she only wanted my 8-year-old to answer. I felt bad right away when I heard that. I thought something was wrong. As we were going, she told us to make sure the house curtains were closed, even though it was a safe place. I thought she was trying to hide something from us by the way she said it, though. The land was very big and fully private. There were trees and open areas all around us, and we couldn't see a single neighbor. I kept hearing what sounded like a big bug with a hard shell flying into the mini split in the bedroom over and over that first night. I was too sleepy to pay attention, though, after being on the road for 18 hours. Things were different the second night. The bathroom that was attached to our room on the second floor kept making a strange metallic tinkering sound while we were sleeping. Luckily, my daughter slept through the noise, but I kept worrying and being uncomfortable. I tried to tell myself that I was just bored and tired from travels. I saw something strange while we were there for 2 days. Every time we got back, I turned off the fan I had left on. Only one mirror in the bathroom could tilt up and down, and it was small and could be extended. But the mirror was always being turned so that a child could see it. I first thought it was my daughter, so I fixed it. I turned it back up on the last day, though, and went downstairs to check on her while she colored. I was shocked to find the mirror turned down again when I went back upstairs. By the 3rd night, I couldn't handle all the strange things going on in the house any longer. My daughter took a shower after days of feeling like someone was watching us. She told me, "I'm going to shut the bathroom door so the lightning bugs can't see me." My daughter is very friendly and generally wants me nearby. When she's showering, she never wants the bathroom door to be closed. This made me think that she felt something too, even if she couldn't say what it was. When we finally got to bed, she went to sleep right away. But I couldn't sleep again because I was worried and having panic attacks, which don't happen to me very often. The sounds then started, and they were even worse than the 2 nights before. The sound of metal working in the bathroom got louder and faster. I thought someone was messing around with the things on the bathroom table, and I thought I heard a glass break. The closet door across from the bed then opened. I heard the door hit my bags because they were in the way. For hours, these sounds wouldn't stop. I felt like I had to run, protect my baby, and leave as soon as I could. When I went into the bathroom the next morning, it was dirty from a child getting out of the shower. What was leaving the wet tracks? I tried to figure it out but failed. During our trip, my daughter didn't play in any mud, and even if she had, there would have been wet tracks from the front door, where we took our shoes off. At the thought of how strange everything had been, I felt a rush of fear. I grabbed our bags right away because I really wanted to leave that place for good. After everything that had happened, I didn't want to stay there any longer. The host texted me after 2 nights that I hadn't come back and offered me a free extra night, but I didn't even answer her. The whole thing took me a few days to get over. My daughter and I were really scared. First, I want to say that I don't really believe in ghosts. But what I went through was really strange, and I still can't explain it. The bad things that happened in the house only lasted about 2 weeks, until we had someone clean it up. My flat has been my home for 3 years. This is a nice spot that's close to parks, shops, and restaurants. Some things feel old, though, since it was built in the late 1990s. Recently, a lot of new people have moved to my city because of the nice weather, strong economy, and fun things to do like fairs and outdoor events. I've seen the landlord's staff working hard to fix and update the homes by doing things like painting the walls, fixing the plumbing, and getting new appliances so they can attract more tenants. Before he bought a house and moved out, my neighbor stayed in his apartment for about 6 years. As soon as he moved out, the owner began updating his apartment. I can hear people going up and down the stairs in my neighbor's apartment because my bedroom is right next to the wall that faces them. The workers were doing major repairs to my neighbor's unit. It was one of the first ones that had such big changes. I watched the workers paint and fix the floors for weeks. Then, when I left for work one morning, I saw them putting in new cabinets and countertops in the kitchen. In the evening, they were not there when I got home. In my room, nothing strange happened at all. The strange part, though, happened at night. Around 1 a.m., I was awake and watching TV in my room. Suddenly, I heard someone on the other side of the wall slowly walk up the stairs. It sounded clear and soft, like someone was trying to be quiet. They stopped in the middle of the stairs, where my head was against the wall. I got a chill as I thought about who it could be at that time. I had the feeling that someone was watching me breathe, which made me feel sick. I sat still and turned off the TV. It was too quiet in the room, and I hadn't heard anything for a while. Next, I heard the person start to walk up the last few stairs to the second floor. It felt like a long time had passed. Then I remembered that I had seen maintenance workers fixing the kitchen in that apartment just a few days before. Someone couldn't have moved in that quickly, though. I got out of bed and went to a room with a better view of the outside of the flat. From the window, I couldn't tell if anyone was moving in the apartment, but I could see if anyone else left. I sat there with my eyes closed for about 15 minutes, hoping to see anything. But nothing happened. I got back to my room and laid down in bed again. This time, I didn't turn on the TV. I just stood there and waited, paying close attention for any sound that could break the quiet. The thought of hearing footsteps again made my heart race as I tried to calm down. After 20 minutes of quiet while scrolling through my phone, I heard someone on the stairs again. The sound didn't come from the top or the bottom this time, though. It began in the middle of the stairs. This meant that while I was sitting there quietly, someone was listening to everything I did on the other side of the wall. I chose to call the cops because I was very scared. The people there told me that someone would be there soon after I explained what was going on. I went back to the other room and looked out the window once more. Soon after, a police car pulled up, and an officer got out to check out the apartment in the building. He held his flashlight up to the windows and looked around. Before I could understand what they were saying, I heard him knock on the door. Soon after, I heard him talking to someone else. The cop then came up to my door and knocked. He told me that someone had just moved in downstairs when I went down there. It made me laugh and feel really bad about myself. But more than that, it made me feel really relaxed. I told myself it was just because I was late and my mind was playing tricks on me. When I got ready to leave my room the next day, I saw something that stopped me in my tracks. I had just taken a few steps toward my car when I saw the repair workers moving the old fridge. I was beaten up by everyone. I went to the flat and looked in through the door, which was wide open. Tools were all over the kitchen, and paint cans were lined up against the wall. Work was still going on inside. I asked a repair worker if anyone had moved in. I was told that the flat wouldn't be ready for at least 3 weeks. I jumped back up to my room and called my house owner. I asked if someone was already there, and she asked me why I was asking, which made me happy. After that, I told her what happened the night before. She was shocked and told me right away that the locks on that apartment would be changed. She also told me to call the police department's non-emergency line and let them know that no one lives there. That's what I did, and they told me to go down to the station. I went there and told them everything that happened. They were able to figure out which cop checked on my apartment last night and could help them figure out who called the doorbell. The police officer told me a lot about the man, and I agreed that I had never seen him around the apartments before. Some people looked all over town for a few weeks, but in the end, nothing was found. I never heard anything else from that flat after that night. After about a month, an older couple moved in. Once the moving van arrived, I went outside to say hello to the people inside. But to be honest, the only reason I went outside was to see if any of them looked like the person the police officer had seen. It was really hard for me to sleep for weeks after that night. I jumped at every sound, and I often stayed awake at night looking at the ceiling because I was scared. It bothered me so much to be near the wall where I could hear footsteps that I moved my bed to the smaller second bedroom. I have no idea what that person was doing on the stairs or what he was trying to do. That thought kept coming back to me. It was one of the scariest things that ever happened to me. Because I've been stalked before and wanted to feel safe, I picked an apartment with a gated garage and key fob locks to get into the building. That being said, the garage gate keeps breaking. They'll fix it, but it will break again in a week and be left open for months. This means that anyone can get in, which makes the gate seem pointless. It's been mentioned more than once, but it doesn't stay fixed, and the people in charge of the building take a long time to make sure it works right. Going up or down the stairs from the garage doesn't lock either. To get into the hallway of the apartment building across from mine, there is a second door that should need a key card. However, this door's lock is also broken, and if you pull on it, it just opens. It hasn't been fixed since I told them about it a month ago. Someone began banging on my door last week around 9:15 p.m. The man was wearing a baseball cap with the hood pulled up over it and a white hoodie with red text on it. His face was hard to see. It was late and I hadn't planned for anyone to come over. I was scared right away. The man didn't look like anyone I knew when I looked through the peephole. He might have thought no one was home if I didn't say anything. He knocked again, and then he stood in the hallway and texted for about 8 minutes. I called my boyfriend because I was scared. He thought it was just someone at the wrong door, maybe even drunk. I tried to calm down, but it didn't sit right with me. Fast forward to last Saturday. When I got home, I let my dogs out and then went back to my apartment. I was taking a shower because I was getting ready for a date with my boyfriend. I was in there when I heard loud banging on my door. I could hear it from the bathroom because it was that loud. Now I was ready to see my boyfriend, so I turned off the shower and put on my robe. But I was really scared when I looked through the peephole and saw the same man in the same jacket and cap. For that reason, I tried to be as quiet as possible and kept calling my boyfriend. I thought he could get to me quickly since he only lived 6 minutes away. Unfortunately, his phone was still on silent from work. The man texted again while waiting in the hallway for about 10 minutes before he finally left. My boyfriend thought I was overreacting again, but I wasn't so sure. I understand that being too cautious can sometimes seem unnecessary, but I have no idea who this man is or why he keeps coming to my flat. The building is supposed to be secure. The apartment management wouldn't say if they knew who the man was or if they had sent someone to my door. Other than saying they would fix the door lock today, they didn't do much else. I feel so upset that my safe space no longer feels safe. I chose to live at Paradise Apartments before I even graduated from high school. However, I didn't fully understand what I needed at the time and was drawn in by features I would probably never use. The major reasons were that it was pet-friendly and didn't break the bank. When it was time for me to get my own place, I signed the lease on the only apartment that was free and moved in. I quickly learned, though, that the place wasn't as nice as I thought it would be. Even though the building had been fixed up, it still had the usual issues like walls that were too thin and pipes that leaked. I also learned that it wasn't in the best area of town, but I did have one class that met in person twice a week at 8 a.m. Most of my studies were online. Most of the time I stayed home during the day and only left for class, quick shopping trips, or evenings to see my boyfriend. Even though my room was nice, it seemed like the Bermuda Triangle. Things had a strange way of going missing, even though I lived alone. For example, if I put something down, it would be gone the next second and then show up in the strangest place later. At the time, I had 2 kittens, and I often put the blame on them when things went missing. But something odd kept happening. When I got home from class, my clothes box would be in the middle of my bedroom floor. Since I didn't have a real closet, I put my clothes on an IKEA shelf with boxes. I had one box for socks, underwear, pants, and pajamas, among other things. I thought I might have forgotten to put the underwear box back after getting ready for class, but I was pretty sure I did, to get to class on time and because I was tired. I started to feel a little scared after a while. I began to believe that some of my clothes were also going missing. When my boyfriend called me one night, I was working on some chores. Because I had a spare key to his flat, he couldn't get in because his roommate had locked him out by accident. He asked if I could quickly open the door for him. I was willing to help, so I put on my coat and left. Before I left, I made a note in my head. In my room, I left all the lights on. I knew I would notice it when I got back because the living room, kitchen, and bedroom were all lit up. As a cheap person, I always made sure to turn off all the lights when I left a room. But my boyfriend lived only 5 minutes away, so I knew I would be back soon. I did come back in less than 15 minutes, as promised. But as soon as I got to my room, I knew something wasn't right. Through the shades, I could tell that the lights were off. My boyfriend drove over to meet me after I called him. When we opened the door, there were no lights on in my flat. I thought the power might have gone out, so I turned on the main light and it worked. My boyfriend looked through the whole flat and saw that no one was there. But someone turned off every light at the switch, even the one I always left on for my lizard because it was set to turn on at a certain time. He also found my laptop, which I had left open while I worked on my project, but it was turned off and shut now. I told him that someone had been in my flat when we called the emergency maintenance number. That's why I told them they must have used a key. There were no signs of theft. When the boss called me back, he told me I must be crazy. Someone had been in my room because I told him I wouldn't have turned off the computer or the lizard light. Because this person must have had a key to get in, I told them I was very worried. I wasn't sure if they worked for the complex, or if they were a guest or former renter. That's why I asked if the locks had been changed after the last renter left. They told me that they always did that. My boss thought it might have been a friend to whom I had given a key, pulling a joke on me. My boyfriend and my mom were the only other people I had given keys to. My boyfriend locked the key to my apartment inside his own apartment, and my mom lived 3 hours away. In any case, neither of them would have pulled this kind of trick. For my safety, the manager finally decided to send someone out right away to change the lock. I told them I was worried that it might be a staff member because no one else would have the keys. The boss said that the keys were kept in a special safe that only certain people knew the code to open. This way, it was possible to keep track of who took which keys and when. From what I knew, there were only 2 maintenance workers at the building. A nice older man who didn't seem very skilled was one, and a younger man with a messy beard who made me feel bad was the other. That's why I thought he was the one who broke into my flat. For the first 3 days after I moved in, the boss told me I would get a new kitchen counter. They said they would bring my cooking stuff in a week, but they still hadn't. And after a few months, I had forgotten all about it. Then one day, the messy maintenance guy walked in without knocking while I was sitting in my living room. He didn't tell me anything. He told me he was there to change my countertop. He worked on just one small part of it for 2 days. The next few weeks, I was getting out of the shower when I heard one knock on the door. "Just 1 minute," I yelled as I hurriedly tried to get dressed. Before I could, though, the door began to open. To keep him out, I had to slam it shut while I was still wrapped in a towel. I didn't believe him when he said he hadn't heard me call out. Then I found another note from him that said he had been inside, but this time he didn't say why. He also said he'd made sure my cats couldn't get out. After that, I went to the office and asked them to make a note in my file that I wanted at least 24 hours notice before anyone came in, and that I wanted to be there whenever they did. Everything made sense after I was sure someone had been sneaking into my flat. Soon after the repair people stopped coming by out of the blue, things began to move around in my apartment. He knew when I came and went because everyone who worked there also lived at Paradise. No one knew how many times he had sneaked in or taken small items as gifts. Soon after, with help from my parents, I bought a house, rented out the apartment, and moved out. At about the same time, I started my first job at a different apartment building. My mom came to town a few days before I left to help me move and pack. I was in class while she was alone in the apartment. When the dirty repair worker tried to use his key to get into my lock, she caught him. When she asked him what he was doing, he said he was painting the front door. No notice had been sent to me yet. He was short on paint and other things he might need. Following a few years, while I was working at another apartment building, the owner of Paradise Apartments came by and pretended to be looking for renters. If someone from one apartment complex acts like they want to rent and takes a tour of another complex, they are shopping and can learn things that might not be easy to find any other way. An HR company will sometimes also look at its own workers to see if they're doing a good job. People shopping generally show certain signs, like asking very specific questions that need exact answers and are simple to get wrong. Being too flexible and wearing or driving a sports car or a fancy suit that make you look too rich for the complex are also red flags. It looked like this guy was too old and had too much money to really be looking for an apartment. He asked me what I thought about other apartment complexes in town, and even called Paradise out by name during the walk. I wouldn't normally say bad things about other places, but I told him I probably wasn't the best person to answer. I said that I thought I was the only person in the last 5 years to give Paradise a bad review. What else could I say? I told him that my apartment had been broken into and I thought it might have been a member of their repair staff. That's when he told me he owned Paradise and was very upset to hear about what I had been through. Then he asked me to give a detailed description of the repairman. Even though I told him it was over and all in the past, he kept on calling the manager at Paradise, who was still the same person, to ask him over the phone. It was true, the manager said. He had to fire a scruffy young maintenance worker because he was caught breaking into the homes of single women more than once. The owner was happy that the problem had been fixed and asked if I would be ready to change my review. I told him no. That didn't change the fact that I had that experience. In fact, it proved what I already thought. I learned a lot about how apartment buildings save time and money when I worked as a leasing agent. If the tenant was good, I saw a lot of apartment complexes that didn't change the locks. Also, many of them didn't do background checks on workers, even though they did it for tenants. Keys were often given to vendors and repair staff without much thought during changes. Not every apartment building works this way, but the ones I worked at did when I first started. Because of what happened to me, when I took over managing an apartment complex, I put up strict rules about changing locks, keeping track of keys, posting the right notices, and making sure that all workers and tenants had background checks. Write down what you think is going on and tell the staff, the cops, family, or friends. Someone could have a key to your room at any time. When I first moved into my current apartment, everything seemed great. It was spacious, affordable, and close to work. But I quickly discovered that the front door to my building didn't always lock properly. The latch often got stuck, leaving the door slightly ajar. I brought this up to management several times, and while they promised to fix it, the issue kept happening. Over time, I started noticing small, unsettling things. At first, I thought it was just my imagination or maybe mistakes on my part. For instance, I'd come home and notice that a drawer I was certain I had closed was now open. Or I'd find things in slightly different places than where I had left them. I chalked it up to being forgetful or distracted. One evening, after coming back from work, I noticed the faint smell of cigarette smoke in my apartment. I don't smoke, and the smell was strongest near the window in my living room, which I always kept locked. I checked it immediately and found it slightly ajar, even though I was sure I had locked it before leaving. I started to feel uneasy but convinced myself that maybe I had forgotten to close it completely. Still, I began double-checking every door and window before leaving the house. A few weeks later, I woke up in the middle of the night to a noise that sounded like faint shuffling. It was coming from my living room. My heart started pounding as I lay still, trying to listen more closely. I told myself it might be the wind or the pipes, anything to avoid panicking. Finally, I gathered enough courage to get out of bed and check. When I turned on the living room light, everything seemed normal at first. But then I noticed something chilling. The window was open again. This time, the lock was broken. I knew I hadn't left it that way. My apartment was on the second floor and there was a fire escape just outside the window. Whoever had been in my apartment had likely entered and exited through there. I called the police immediately and reported what had happened. They did a sweep of the building and the area outside but didn't find anyone. They told me it might have been someone using the fire escape to sneak into various apartments, and they advised me to get better locks installed. Management finally replaced the window locks and fixed the building's front door after my complaints became more urgent. But the experience left me feeling violated and unsafe in my own home. Even now, I occasionally wake up in the middle of the night listening for any sound that might suggest someone is there. While nothing else has happened since, the memory of those nights still haunts me. When I moved into my first apartment, I was thrilled to have a place to call my own. It was a small studio in an older building, but it felt cozy and private. For the first few months, everything seemed fine. Then one night, as I was lying in bed, I heard a faint tapping sound coming from the wall behind me. At first, I thought it might be my neighbors, but the sound was too irregular and soft, almost as if someone was lightly knocking with their fingers. The next night, it happened again. This time, the tapping started and stopped in intervals, moving along the length of the wall. It was unsettling, but I convinced myself it was just old pipes or some other harmless explanation. About a week later, I came home to find the window in my kitchen slightly open. I always kept it closed and locked, so this was strange. My building was old and the windows weren't in great condition, so I assumed it might have slipped open on its own. I locked it again and didn't think much of it. A few days after that, I was cooking dinner when I noticed something odd. A kitchen towel that I kept on the counter was on the floor. It wasn't where I had left it, and my door had been locked all day. I was starting to feel uneasy, but I didn't have any concrete reason to think someone had been inside. Things escalated about a month later. One night I woke up to the sound of footsteps in my apartment. My heart raced as I lay perfectly still, listening. The footsteps were faint, but they were definitely inside. I couldn't bring myself to move or make a sound. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps stopped. I didn't hear a door open or close, and there were no other sounds. I stayed awake the rest of the night, too terrified to investigate. The next morning, I checked every corner of my apartment. Nothing was missing, but a picture frame on my shelf had been moved. It was tilted, slightly off-center, and I knew I hadn't left it that way. I reported the incident to my landlord, who brushed it off and said it was probably just my imagination, but I knew what I had heard. The final straw came a few weeks later when I came home to find my front door unlocked. I was certain I had locked it when I left. I called the police, but they found no sign of forced entry and nothing was missing. They suggested it might have been an accident on my part, but I wasn't convinced. After that, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been watching me, that whoever had been in my apartment might come back. I broke my lease and moved out as soon as I could. To this day, I still wonder who was in my apartment and why. The experience left me feeling paranoid and overly cautious, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. Story 8. I moved into a gated apartment complex last year thinking it would provide a sense of security. For the first few months, everything was fine, but then I started noticing things that didn't add up. The complex uses key fobs to access the building, but sometimes I'd see strangers wandering around the hallways. I assumed they were guests or delivery drivers at first, but it became clear that some of them didn't belong. One night I came home late from work. As I parked my car in the underground garage, I noticed a man standing near the elevator. He wasn't dressed like a resident or a maintenance worker, and he seemed to be loitering. I hesitated before getting out of my car, choosing to wait until he left. Eventually, he walked toward the stairs and disappeared. I quickly went upstairs and locked my apartment door behind me. A week later, I heard a loud banging on my door around 10 p.m. I froze and waited to see if it would stop. After a few moments, the banging turned into knocking, and a voice called out, "Is anyone home?" I looked through the peephole and saw a man in a hoodie, his face partially obscured. He didn't look familiar, and I couldn't think of any reason why someone would be at my door so late. I stayed silent, hoping he'd think no one was home. After a few minutes, he left, but I was too shaken to sleep that night. When I reported the incident to the building management, they dismissed it, saying it was probably a delivery person at the wrong door. I wasn't convinced. A few days later, I started noticing scratches around the lock on my front door, as if someone had tried to tamper with it. I took photos and showed them to management, but they didn't seem concerned. They promised to check the security footage, but never followed up with me. The incident stopped after I installed a security camera outside my door, but I still feel uneasy whenever I come home late. The thought that someone was trying to get into my apartment still sends chills down my spine. When I started college, I rented a small apartment near campus. It wasn't the nicest place, but it was cheap and I didn't mind living alone. For the most part, it was uneventful, until one night when I was studying late. Around midnight, I heard a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and I hadn't ordered food or anything. When I looked through the peephole, I saw a man standing there. He looked disheveled and was mumbling to himself. I didn't open the door, but asked what he wanted. He didn't respond directly, but kept muttering something I couldn't make out. After a few minutes, he left. The next morning, I found a note taped to my door. It read, "You're not safe here." The handwriting was messy, almost like it had been scrawled in a hurry. I reported it to my landlord, who said he would check the security cameras, but I never heard back. That was the beginning of a series of strange occurrences. I'd come home to find my doormat moved or my mailbox left open. One night, I found a small stuffed animal sitting in front of my door. I didn't own anything like it, and I had no idea where it came from. Eventually, I couldn't take the paranoia anymore. I broke my lease and moved to a different apartment complex. Looking back, I wish I had been more assertive with management or the police, but at the time I just wanted to get out.